Let us head on to the next section and briefly see what we are going to be discussing about this. What are the public facilities? And we're going to go see Human Development Report. Under Human Development Report, we are going to see sustainable development. The concept that I've told you is very, very important to this generation is sustainable development. After that, we're going to evaluate two case studies with respect to sustainable development and how to conserve these resources. And then we're going to give a very brief, valid, positive conclusion. Let's get ahead with this section. First, we'll be dealing with public facilities. Money in your pocket cannot buy all the goods and services that you may need to live well. This is very general. So, income by itself is not completely adequate indicator of material goods and services that citizens are able to use. For example, your money cannot buy you a pollution-free environment, can it? Your money can also not ensure that you get unadulterated medicines unless you can afford to shift to a community that already has all these things. For many of the important things in the life, the best way it is to provide these goods and services correctly, collectively. Just think, will it be cheaper to have collective security for the whole community or locality, or for each house to have their own security man? Just think which is a more practical option. What if no one other than you in your village or locality is interested in studying? Would you be personally able to study? Even if you're interested, do you think it's a probable option? Not unless your parents could afford to send you to some private school elsewhere. So you're actually able to study because many other children together collectively want to study. And because many people believe that the government should open schools and provide other facilities so that all children will have such an opportunity, public facilities are even put into place. Because not everyone can afford a private education. Some people can just afford the bare necessities of what a government school will provide. So this is why public facilities are even there, so that each one of us can enjoy our rights collectively. So let us see what is the Human Development Report. Once it is realized that even though the level of income is important, yet it is not an adequate measure of the whole level of development, we begin to think of other criteria that is very, very necessary for our development, because we already know just income is not necessary. So there are two very important indicators, that is health and education. So these are widely used along with income as a measure of a country's development. For instance, Human Development Report that is published by United Nations Development Program UNDP compares countries that are based on, let us see the criteria. First criteria is the education levels of the people. Second criteria is their health status. Third criteria is the per capita income. Next, let us see sustainability of development, which I have earlier mentioned is a super important topic. So these are the sustainable development goals that are put up by the United Nations. There are a set of 17 goals that you can see in the picture, which ranges from a majority of the socio-economic conditions that different countries face today, in terms of poverty, in terms of housing, in terms of hunger, in terms of having the basic facilities. So you can take a look at what are the 17 sustainable development goals. Suppose for the present that a particular country, it is quite developed. Suppose there's a country that is quite developed as of now. We would certainly like this level of development to go up further, or at least be maintained like the same level for future generations. This is generally very desirable by any country or any person. Recently, A number of scientists have been warning that the present type of development are not sustainable. What does that mean? What does not sustainable mean? Non sustainable means that whatever kind of development or the kind of necessities we have right now will not be present in the future. It is definitely going to go down the graph. There's going to be a depletion of everything, but it is either not going to stay this, it's neither going to stay the same nor it is going to increase. Hence, the scientists are warning us to, uh, take in a more sustainable, stable kind of a living, having a circular economy, stopping plastics, and etc. So that is what sustainability means. Let's take an example of groundwater. As you all know, groundwater is an example of renewable resources. It keeps getting refilled again and again. These resources are replenished by nature, as in the case of crops and plants. However, even in these resources, they may be overused to an extent where it is not sustainable for the future. For example, in the case of groundwater, if we use more than what is being replenished by rain, then we could be overusing this resource. Non-renewable sources are those which will get exhausted after many years of use. So it's not there in an unlimited quantity. If you use more of it, it keeps getting over after every use. So hence you call that non-renewable because we have a fixed stock on earth which cannot be replenished like groundwater. So let us take a brief sustainable use of groundwater as a case study in India. Recent evidence suggests that the groundwater is under serious threat of overuse in many parts of the country. About 300 districts have reported a water level decline of over 4 meters during the past 20 years. Nearly 1/3 of the country is overusing their groundwater reserves. In another 25 years, 60% of the country would be doing the same if the present way of using this resource continues. So you can see the kind of a unsustainable future that we will have if the same practice continues for the next few years. Groundwater overuse is particularly found in the agricultural prosperous regions such as Punjab, Western UP, and hard rock plateau areas of central and south India, some coastal areas, and the rapidly growing urban settlements. So these areas are overly using the groundwater to an extent that in a few years down the lane, our future generations are not even going to be having groundwater, despite the groundwater being a renewable resource. Let's take another example of sustainability. Crude oil, the example being exhaustion of natural resources. Crude oil is the one that we extract from deep inside the earth, and crude oil is a non-renewable resource that is the opposite of the groundwater example. However, we may find a source of oil that we did not know of earlier. Explorations are being undertaken all the time, especially in the countries like Middle East, USA, etc. Countries like India depend on importing oil from abroad because they don't have enough resources of our own. If the prices of oil increases, this becomes a burden for every common man that is in India. There are countries like USA which have low reserves and hence want to secure oil through military or economic power, so that in order to have good enough oil, good amount of oil for our future generations, for us to sustain our economy. Consequences of environmental degradation do not respect national or state boundaries. This issue is no longer region or nation specific, but it applies to the whole world. Sustainability of development is comparatively a new concept in which scientists, economists, philosophers, and other social scientists are working together. At sometimes, as a member of the society and as individuals, we need to ask where we want to go. We need to ask what we wish to become, and we also need to ask ourselves what our main goals are.